How's it going, everyone? Welcome to the December 16th edition of the Fight Game Chronicles. I am James Lynch, as always, joined by my co-host Kevin. Kev, what's up, man? How are you doing?
Good to see you again, my brother.
Yes. How are things? You were busy. You've been everywhere. From what I've been seeing, I've been trying to pay attention on IG what I can. But how's these last 2 weeks been? We missed last week because I know you're very busy.
Yeah, man, with duty calls, obviously I have a job being a manager and having all these guys who are getting ready for fights. I got guys who got camps in Los Angeles. I got a guy who got camp in Dallas. I got another guy who has a camp in Houston. I mean, I'm jumping city to city, going to each guy's camp and just seeing how that's going. We're trying to finish out the year strong and then start the year off even stronger. So I'm sorry I missed you guys last week, but here I am back in the mix.
Back in the saddle. I actually wanted to ask you one thing. We don't have it in our notes here, but how was the Spence and Garcia fight? Did you end up going?
No, I actually didn't end up going. We didn't make it to that fight, but I definitely got to watch it. And what a fight! I mean, what a fighter, man! What Errol Spence. We'll dive into that too.
Well, exactly. We got plenty of time, but we are going to start again with boxing here. Let's start first with this Anthony Joshua fight over the weekend. Really good win. Tyson Fury not so impressed. I love that video. We went to IG Live right after that happened. But what did you think of Joshua's performance? Again, I think he obviously won. He got the finish, but it's one of those things where I don't think he blew people away. What did you think?
Yeah, I mean, it was a tough, gritty veteran that he faced with Pulev. Pulev only has one loss, which is to Klitschko. And it was a tough fight. I knew it was going to be tough. I knew he had to figure him out. And I knew that if he was going to beat this guy, he was going to have to keep him on the ground. And that was the hard part with a guy like that. Very, very, very smart veteran guy. Knows how to survive. Knows how to make things real dirty, he did exactly what I thought he would do. And Joshua came in a little bit more with a little more fire in his gut. He came in to really a little meaner. He was a little meaner, you know what I mean? And he needed to be meaner to get rid of a guy like that, because a guy like that you can't play nice with. So he did what he was supposed to do. Again, there's still I still see flaws, even though he's that good. He's so good that if you don't know what you're looking at, you can't really see his flaws. But I can still see holes where a guy like Fury can definitely take advantage of. Even Deontay Wilder can take advantage of.
Interesting. Well, I wanted to bring it up as well, just his performance, because obviously what's looming is the Tyson Fury fight, right? So it's not like you can't be too risky, right? If you lose, you lose out on that big payday. You lose out on that fight. I mean, that's not something we really see in MMA too much, but in boxing, there are guys got to keep active. They got to keep going. What do you think that played into his performance as well? Just knowing that Fury was on the horizon, that he just had to win. It didn't really matter how.
At the level that they're on, the level that Joshua's on, everything's on the line every single fight going forward.
True.
For the last 3 years. I mean, you saw what happened when he lost to Andy. He lost everything, and he had to go get it back. Luckily, he had a chance to get it back. So everything is always on the line when you're the heavyweight champion and you have 3 belts and you're sitting at the top over there. Everything's on the line every fight. So, yeah.
Yeah, no, it was certainly interesting. Anything you're hearing in terms of when that Fury and Joshua fight could take place?
Oh, well, I'm hearing that they're going into negotiations now with Top Rank and Matchroom are talking now, and also Bob Arum's in the mix, and so we'll see how things play out. But another interesting thing that I heard was Saudi Arabia is in the play for that fight. So I'm hearing that that the purses may double or even get as high as they could possibly get if they go and take this fight to Saudi Arabia. But honestly, if I was them, I would do this fight at Wembley in front of 90,000. It only makes sense, right? They're both from the UK, and it only makes sense for them to do it in front of their crowd.
Well, I'm wondering then, do they delay it with all the COVID stuff? Because I know they can have a little bit of a crowd. Like we did get to see that in the Joshua fight. You could hear some fans in there, which was actually great. I mean, we haven't had that in the UFC all year. Do you think they wait a bit till they get more people in there? Or do you think they'll just do it just to get the timing right? Because I mean, COVID's kind of putting a wrench in things.
I don't. I honestly, personally, me, for the sake of history, I don't want this fight to be an empty stadium fight. This fight needs to be fully packed. Hell, I want to be there, so they better have a crowd in there, because I'm trying to be there. Yeah. So, I can't miss that. I was there the night that Andy Ruiz knocked out Joshua. We were in the building that night. Fanatic View was in the building, and I don't want to miss that. I mean, that's the greatest night of boxing I've ever seen in my life. So that night where Tyson Fury fights Anthony Joshua should be in front of a crowd. And also, I don't think there should be a rush to try to get it in the first quarter. I think if we can't get it in the first quarter between January and April, I think they should wait for the summer. I mean, summertime, by the time they figured out, what's going on with this whole COVID thing, and we'll be far more ahead with sports than we are right now.
Do you think there's any chance? I mean, they're both international guys. I mean, it makes sense, like you said, Wembley Stadium, but do you maybe go to the States just because of the COVID rules, or even Saudi Arabia? I think, you brought that up. Obviously, there's deep pockets out there, but you look at the UFC, they're going to Fight Island again next year. And part of the reason I think is because of the COVID stuff. There's no positive tests over there. Everyone's a little bit more controlled, as opposed to, say, in Vegas, where I'm sure we'll talk some MMA later, but I mean, they're really limping into the end of this year with some of these positive COVID tests. In fact, the UFC event we have this Saturday is not even happening, the original main event, because of a positive COVID test.
Yeah, I mean, if the opportunity presents itself and things, again, first of all, I think that I think the UFC has a contractual binding agreement with whoever they made a deal with out there in
government
Saudi Arabia.
Yeah,
it's a definitely contractual binding situation, to where they're just gonna have to play this whole thing out according to the contract. I'm sure they paid a lot of money. And I'm sure the UFC is spending a lot of money to be there, and I'm sure that Saudi Arabia also spent a lot of money to have them there. No, it's Abu Dhabi, excuse me, paying a lot of money to have that deal over there. So I think they want to finish out that contract, and I guess because things still not as clear as it needs to be. The only thing that's clear right now that we know for sure in fight business is that Texas is wide open, so everybody goes to Texas. Everybody has a fight. I mean, you have everybody going to go have a fight there, but other than that, Nevada is still tough. Florida is good, but it's not really a fight capital. So Texas will allow fighting to be at its full capacity sooner than everybody else will. So if that presents itself, then shoot, go ahead and go and take that. But if I think in order for them, it should be Wembley first. If they can get that, they need to do it at home in front of that crowd, in front of their people. They're both from there. It only makes sense. If that's not available to them, then they should bring it to statewide. Because at least, we're here, and I'm being a little biased, but we're here. And third, Saudi Arabia. But I think when it comes to money, I think Saudi Arabia is definitely first, because they're ready to throw that money at them.
There you go. We'll have to see how that pans out for next year. But in the meantime, the big talk in boxing is all this YouTubers. Since we went away, of course, never a dull moment. This Logan Paul and Floyd Mayweather thing, I mean, where to begin on this? First off, they're already releasing the pay-per-view price, which I think is kind of interesting, where you can get it now at a cheaper price, and then as closer it gets to the fight, the price increases here. But just your reaction to this, because I'm kind of like, but then at the same time, I'm like, well, you know what? It's kind of an interesting model. They're teasing people right now with this fight. What do you think of it?
So I got to explain something to the people. People need to understand this, okay? So the reason why this works is because these guys have built a base already, right? I'm talking about these YouTube guys, these Logan Pauls and Jake Pauls. You see, the main goal of a fighter is to become a world champion. But after you become a world champion, it's to become a pay-per-view star. The name of the game is to sell pay-per-views, period. It doesn't matter what you say. It doesn't matter how good you are. We've seen guys come around that have been the best fighters, and they can't sell a lick. So these guys, these YouTubers, can sell pay-per-views. It's that simple. There's nothing else to tell you. That the name of the game is sell pay-per-views. Now, they're doing their due diligence by actually training and preparing. See, that was where I was really on the fence with these guys, was about, are these guys going to come in here and they're going to train? Are they going to prepare correctly? Are they going to, pay homage to the sport? Because I'm in the gym with these guys, and I train with my fighters, and I know how hard it is to do training. I know how hard it is to live that type of a life. But I'll tell you what, those two brothers are definitely in the gym training. Now, they're not fighting fighters when it comes to a fight, but they're training hard, and they're putting in the work that needs to be done. And then, again, Jake has BJ Flores with him, who's a former cruiserweight titleist. So that's his trainer. So he's around a real fighter that's teaching him real fighter stuff. But that's really what it comes down to. So that's why these things work. Now, as far as Floyd and Logan goes, just a money grab. It's something that, see, fighting fans, you've been around this game for a while now. Fighting fans are very gullible, very, very gullible fans. So, and then you have people like you and I, and people who are really, really embedded in the actual fight business, and we actually know what the truth is and what's going on here and what's happening here. But a novice, a regular person sees that, they think there's an actual chance, or they think they thought Conor had a chance. That, bro, Floyd Mayweather they don't have a chance. You know what I'm saying? But it's the hope that something can happen is why they're all buying. And I love their pay-per-view model. Early bird gets the worm. $25 early on, and then as we get closer to the date, if you don't buy that early, then you're just going to get it at the $65 rate. So it all works. It all works. It makes sense to me.
Sort of on that last point, that's something I said the UFC should have done a while ago. And granted, I know they don't know all their pay-per-views in advance, but they should have something where if you want to buy like a yearly package, whether it's through Fight Pass or whatever, I mean, they're doing everything through ESPN Plus now. If they could give you a cheaper rate for certain pay-per-views or something to kind of give some incentive to buy ahead of time, I think that would work better because you know what? I know a lot of people pirating UFC pay-per-views because they're too bloody expensive. Yeah, and I think if they looked into that a little bit and maybe saw something like what they're doing now with the early bird special, at least give some type of discount, I think fans would be more on board. So I'm with you there. I like that entire model. I think it makes a lot of sense. And who wouldn't want to pay for something cheaper if you're already going to watch it anyways?
I think that the UFC's model is essentially so the furthest they go on their calendar, on their schedules, is about 3-4 months in advance. Yeah. That's as far as they go. 4 months is as far as they go, if I'm not mistaken. So right now they're putting together March's card, right? So that's how. So we're in December. So you kind of see how this thing plays out. But that model should be definitely duplicated. That model is the model that artists use on the road. A Live Nation gives you early bird tickets for a tour before the tour gets there. And then you pay a different price when it gets closer to the date. And if you show up to that door, if there's still tickets available, you're paying a premium to walk in that building. So it all makes sense to me.
Yeah, and we'll see what happens. Another thing we should mention is that Floyd Mayweather did an exhibition fight last year for Rizin, if you remember, in Japan. And it was sort of, kind of a thing, where you're not really getting a fight, right? Like, I think this will be a little bit different, but I mean, Floyd's not going out there to lose. I think the only intrigue about this fight really is that Jake Paul's so much bigger than Floyd is, but you're talking about the best defensive boxer, one of the best defensive boxers of all time. Like, there's not really much intrigue. You know what I mean?
Yeah, the guy in Asia had a better chance than Logan did. The guy in Asia had a better chance than Logan did. The guy in Asia also had a better chance than Conor did. It's just that the lights were too bright for him. And, he crumbled under those lights. But he is actually a really good fighter, that the young man. And he was very young. Yeah, he was 23, 24 years old. He's very young, so the lights were just too bright. But Logan, on the other hand, he's a big guy. But again, size is not – people think size is an advantage in fighting. Size is only an advantage if you know what you're doing and how to utilize it. Most of the time it's a disadvantage. Guys don't know that. Sometimes being bigger than a guy or stronger or having more muscles is actually a disadvantage to you because I could do more with you. The longer your limbs are, I could do way more with you, especially in mixed martial arts. So, yeah.
Well, that's not the only Paul who's been in the news lately. Jake Paul, of course, has been on this campaign calling out Conor McGregor. So the first video I watched, the one where he was kind of going after D. Devlin and all that, I was kind of like, a little bit cringy. But I got to be honest, Kev, when I saw that video of him throwing garbage at Dylan Dennis, I did laugh. I thought that
that was pretty funny. These guys, man. I get it. I get it. Trust me, I get it. I'm a young guy, and they're young guys. I get what they're doing. They're selling a fight. That's what they're doing. They're selling this thing, and that's what the problem is with fighters. Fighters don't know how to sell a fight. Don't know how to make themselves bigger. These kids know how to do it because they've done it off of YouTube. So they're just building and building and building this thing up until they can cash in on it. Makes perfect sense. I'm with it with all of that. The issue that I have or we have is the respect. There has to be some respect in this game. You don't get disrespectful until somebody disrespects you or somebody says something that's out of line, and that's kind of what Nate was telling him in that tweet. The other night, have some respect. You know what I'm saying? Because these guys are putting in work, and also like if you run into a real fighter, it's a whole different conversation, buddy. Like everything that you said will be held against you, once you see them in person or so. This is just it's not another YouTuber or an NBA player or NFL guy that you're fighting. He will beat, I'll put it to you this way. Jake can beat civilians all day. He'll beat civilians all day because he's training and he's been training for the last 2 years. So he should be able to beat civilians. But when you got other fighters, and you got to be around these other fighters. And these guys are already mad at the fact that you're getting pay-per-view money. And these guys have been putting in work for 10, 15 years. And they're not seeing what you're seeing. And they think you're a dweeb anyways. Bro, you're going to have it out for you, dude. And some guys will do it for free. They won't even do it for money. They'll just beat you up just because. So you gotta tread softly. He still has to have some type of respect, And that's just my opinion on that.
No, I like the opinion. I mean, I don't think the Conor fight will ever happen. There's no real incentive in terms of, and not just that, but I don't think Dana, like the Floyd Mayweather thing's one thing, but Jake Paul, a YouTuber, I mean, Dana White sort of already shut it down, even said, I'll get Amanda Nunes to fight you or something along those lines. I don't know if you caught that, but yeah, just kind of crushing those. And then Dylan Dennis, I mean, we talked about this before, like Scott Coker's not going to let Dylan Dennis go fight somewhere else. He's a commodity for Bellator. The only way that fight happens is under the Bellator banner, and they just don't have the money to put on a fight like that, in my opinion. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, Conor wants to portray to the world that he owns himself outright, but he doesn't. Because if he did, this fight would happen for sure. 1,000,000,000%. He would cash in on this, the easiest payday of his life, right? Yeah. But he doesn't own himself outright. He's still under contract with the UFC. So he has to play it out how he needs to play it out. And then once he gets out of there, he'll be able to do that. But if Dana and the UFC had to make this, they wouldn't make this happen, because of just like the fact that these guys are YouTubers, and also the fact that he's kind of already said that. So he has to stick to his guns, even though he knows it's monetarily beneficial, but he won't do it, for his pride and ego. And
I wonder, are we going to see any other YouTubers come out of the woodwork and try this? Because it's just the Paul brothers so far, but you got to wonder if there's other guys out there that are kind of looking at this and saying, hey, you know what? Maybe I can make a payday. Have you been hearing anything about that?
I don't think YouTubers. I think you'll see rappers. You see rappers.
Right. Yeah, that's a good point.
They're going to throw themselves. Whoever is brave enough. I mean, I've seen Wiz. Wiz has been training at Unbreakable for the last 2-3 years. He's been doing Muay Thai with he's been doing that at Breakable and whatnot. So I know he's been training, but I don't know if he wants to take a fight or not. OT the Genesis has been training. I don't know if he's going to take a fight or not. But if you never know, the fight business is a real funny business. It could change in a day, so you never know what can happen out here. If the right amount of interest is there and the right amount of marketing is done outside of it, and it's just really for them to cash out, they'll cash out. These TVs and these people will cash out.
And just sort of last thing on the YouTube thing, I've already seen some media people and others being like, I don't care about this, but you guys got to understand there is an interest for it. We talked about this on the first episode where celebrity boxing was a thing in the 90s. I mean, it really was. It was one of the highest rated programs on Fox. Yeah. If people don't think there's any interest there, you're just not understanding the market. Don't turn your backs on this. This is actually a thing. And if it does happen, you don't want to be looking stupid and saying, oh, I would never watch a Jake Paul fight. Yeah, you will. All these people are.
Dude, let me tell you something, man. We were on... I was on the fence just like everybody was, right? And I was like, there's no way. I thought it was disrespectful, honestly. Yeah. We show up to the press conference. I said this in our last podcast, but we show up to the press conference, and I'm there and I'm sitting there and I'm like, man, and I look at Taylor, where they were Fanatic Views, and I'm just there. This is Logan fighting, I believe. And I look at him and say, I can't believe we're here. I can't believe this is actually what's going on. And eventually I came around to it because I saw the card was stacked with other fighters on it. And really it was helping the other fighters get in front of a bigger crowd, which made a little more sense to me and made me more at ease and at peace with it, even though they were not headlining the card. Nevertheless, I feel like we're at a point now in fighting where boxing is not what it used to be. And, to be the heavyweight champion of the world, or to be any champion of the world, you were considered the #1 athlete in the world. Whether it was Muhammad Ali, Sugar Ray Leonard, Sugar Ray Robinson, you go down the list, Now there's all these sports that dominate sports in general. So for them to make this exciting again and to make it to propel it because of the numbers, I think that it benefits the fighters. Now, what point does it get to where it becomes too much? I don't know yet. I don't think we've reached that place yet, but we shall soon. I think that if these guys want to legitimize themselves as actual fighters and they want to gain the respect of the fighters, I think they should fight a fighter. And then it's all bets are off, So we'll see.
We'll be keeping tabs on that. I'm sure this won't be the last time we'll be talking about YouTube.
Oh, not at all. We got months of this shit going.
Yeah, exactly. This weekend we've got a boxing fight and we've got a UFC card. Boxing, for the last couple of weeks has sort of been dominating MMA, in my opinion. You had the Tyson Jones card. You had the Spence and Garcia card. I think last weekend, more people with the 256 pay-per-view, which actually ended up being pretty good. I think that sort of eclipsed the Joshua fight, and also the timing worked out too because Joshua was on earlier in the day, so it didn't really impact anything. But this weekend, what do you think is a bigger deal? Because Canelo's fighting. It's Canelo, right? I mean, this is one of the biggest stars in boxing right now. And we've got this UFC card, which I think if it was Chimaev fighting this weekend like it was supposed to be, I think this would be a bigger deal. Unfortunately, Wonderboy Thompson and Geoff Neal love both those fighters, but I don't think they hold as much. I still think boxing's taken this weekend. What do you think?
1,000,000,000% it is.
Yeah.
Canelo is the #1 pound for pound fighter in the world. And also, I don't know if you saw this yet, but there's a picture that went out with the size difference between Canelo and and uh, and
It did.
uh,
Callum Smith. Yeah.
and Callum Smith. I mean, the size difference is just enough of an intrigue for people to tune in to see. Again, this is this whole size thing. Somehow, some way, people have think that if you're bigger, you're supposed to win a fight. But that's not necessarily the case, man. Sometimes those are liabilities. And you'll see why when a guy as skilled as Canelo goes in there and takes apart another bigger guy. Remember, Canelo already fought his brother. So now, granted, his brother Liam is not as good as Callum is, but they're schooled in the same school, of fighting. They're taught by the same person, and they were raised by the same people, and they did this thing together. So they're a fighting family. There's another brother that fights too. I can't remember his name, but again, you'll see, there's nothing Canelo enjoys more than a big guy that he could go to the body with. And you're about to see a guy get broken down to the body. You're about to watch a class on how to break a big guy down to the body. That is just my opinion. We'll see how this thing plays out, right? But this is just my assessment of how it will go down. But granted, Callum's a really good boxer. I don't want to take nothing away from Callum, but there's levels. There's levels, man, and this Canelo guy is on a whole different level, man.
He certainly is. Where would you sort of rank Smith in terms of Canelo's past opponents? I mean, this is a guy that's been in there with the best. Do you rank him as one of the more? I think with the size, it does add a little bit more. But you're right. Like there are levels. He's not on the level of a Canelo.
Well, I think that he's a really, really good boxer. He does everything well. He doesn't there's not really a hole in his game per se. Yeah, he does everything well. He has a good jab. He has good range. He sometimes digs to the body well. He's good. He's good all around. And also he's in his prime. That's another very important thing that we gotta when we come to compare these guys. Now, Canelo has fought a list of who's and also guys of who are in their prime. I would, off the top of my head, I would put him. I say Floyd is the best guy that Canelo's fought. Then I would say Triple G gave him. I think he lost one to Triple G. That was a draw. That I think he lost that. That was the best Triple G that he could have got. I think that I would throw probably Jacobs in there. That was a good fight. That was a good, intense fight for him. Miguel Cotto was a good one. And yeah, I think Sergio was maybe Sergio Kovalev was a little bit past this, like maybe just a year or two too late for Canelo. Maybe if he was 2-3 years before that, I think he could have got a better chance. And Mosley was over the hill. So I think that Smith, as far as credibility goes, as far as size, age, also the belts that he has, you got to understand he's a unified champion at his weight. He won that Super Series. He has all of those 3 belts, 4 belts, or whatever, how many belts he got over there. So he's beat the, kind of who's in his weight. So I think as far as just name goes and as far as status goes and as far as prime-wise goes, I think he's in there. Now, it comes down to what guy shows up on Saturday. If he puts up a great thing, then he'll be in his top 5 guys that he's fought. If he doesn't put up a good performance, then I don't know, man.
And I'm looking at the odds here. Right now you can get Canelo Alvarez about -670, Callum Smith +400. I mean, that's not too wide. Usually you get into like the thousands when you get most boxing matches for the most part, unless it's like a really close fight, like a Canelo Alvarez and Triple G type fight. But it is interesting here that, Alvarez, it just kind of like, that's why I asked you the question about level of opponent, because it's not like, at least in MMA, this would be a big deal. But in boxing, I mean, this is actually a fairly closer line than what you're used to, right?
Yeah, I mean it's the pedigree of Callum, and it's also the pedigree of Callum, and also Callum is a unified champion. So he's not just a slouch walking in. Also, the size difference makes everybody be like, "Whoa!" Like I'm sure the odds changed after the picture went out yesterday.
Yeah,
I don't think the odds were the same this whole time. I think it might have drastically changed it a bit and made it a little closer because people are looking at him like, "There's no way he's gonna beat this guy that's 6'3". He looks like he's almost 200 pounds to me from what I saw in that picture. But we'll see, man.
And then where does a win for Alvarez, Canelo Alvarez, you feel like what sort of sets up next? What are you hearing in terms of potential matchup for Canelo? Not looking past Saturday, but we have to, right?
Okay, so Here's my opinion on what I think. So you got a bunch of young, in their prime guys that are world champions between 60, 68, and 75. I mean, the pool is full of these monsters. Even if you want to go down to 54, I don't think Canelo will ever go back down to 54 ever again. I think those days are gone. I think 60 and 68 he likes. I think he'll bounce back and forth between those two. This fight is at 68. So a lot of dogs over there. Now, where does he go from here? It's tough to say because he beats this guy 68 and he takes his belts. Then that leaves, David Benavidez. That leaves Caleb Plant, who was almost supposed to get that fight. You still have our friend out there in Europe from England, Billy Joe Saunders. So you still got names that are in their prime that he could fight. The Charlos. I mean, shoot, the Charlo brothers. I mean, those guys are still sitting there. They've been trying to get a fight with this guy for a while. So there's the opponents doesn't end, for a guy like him. But if he's smart, or if he wants to propel himself again to another level, I think that he goes back down to 160 and takes on either Billy Joe Saunders, or he takes on Charlo, in my opinion, because those guys have been have been around a little bit more longer than David Benavidez, and but David's only 23, 24 years old. Caleb Plant's only 24, 23. And then we have Spence. See, this is okay. So I got to go into this. We got time? Can I go into this?
We got plenty of time.
Right,
you got as much time as you need here.
All right. Perfect scenario for me, okay? Errol Spence. Errol Spence fought last week. He won that fight, right? Mm-hmm. Everybody wants Errol Spence to fight Terrence Crawford. But in my personal opinion, I think that is a high-risk, low-reward fight. I think that he beats him. I think he beats Errol Spence, but Errol Spence beats Terrence, but what does he really gain from beating Terrence? He gains the respect of other fighters and people like ourselves who actually know that these are the two best in the world. But does he get more popular? No. Does he make more money? No. Does he does he become a pay-per-view star? No. He gets none of those. However, if Errol goes and fights Manny Pacquiao next, takes his belt, becomes even a bigger star to get that guy under his belt, and then moves up from there to go 160 and go take Canelo, now we're talking. Because now that's two huge stars that he can take and put under his belt in his resume as guys that he's beat. I think that he moves up from 47. If he doesn't like 54, I think he goes straight to 60 and goes and fights Canelo, and Canelo should come down from 68 and meet him at 60. Now we're talking legendary stuff right here. You know what I'm saying? This is legendary. So I think that, and they should do it in Texas, Cowboy Stadium. I think that is the best route for him. If the Terrence Crawford fight is there, sure, take it. But do you have to? No, because you don't really gain anything from it. You gain our respect, but I already think you're the best in the world at your weight. So the naysayers and everybody, beat Pacquiao at 147, move up to 160, and go take Canelo. And Canelo should move down. And then now you got a clash of the Titans, and both guys are in the top 5 in pound for pounds, in my opinion. So we'll see how that plays out.
Well, yeah, and I think that theory makes a lot of sense because it's all about, what is the best, financial option as well. Like you said, you get those bigger fights. There's a little bit more sizzle there. It's not necessarily about merit. If everything was based off merit, you wouldn't have as much viewership as you have. You have to have some fights in there that are going to get people enticed. And that's why, fans will come out and watch. Even in MMA, we've seen this, right? Like you'll have certain fights that are a bigger deal that aren't even for the title that people are more like into, so you have to sort of look at it from that perspective as well. Okay. Well, yeah, there you go. That's boxing. We'll talk a little bit more boxing in a second here, but we do have to talk about the UFC card. It is the last UFC card of the year. So the main event is going to be Stephen Wonderboy Thompson taking on Geoff Neal. Now, if you guys don't know Geoff Neal, look this guy up. I am a believer in this guy. He comes out of Fortis MMA. This guy is, I think, going to be a title challenger someday, but he's got a big test here in Wonderboy because outside of losing to Woodley and that one loss to Anthony Pettis last year, where he got knocked out in a fight that he was actually winning, Thompson's looked pretty good. He actually got a win last year over Vicente Luque on the same card as I know you were there for Nate Diaz, where he beat Vicente Luque, who's kind of similar to Neal in the sense that he's an up-and-comer with really good knockout power. But I think Geoff Neal's a different animal, and I think he's going to pull this off this weekend. And I think we're going to start talking about him being a contender as opposed to Wonder Boy, who's been out just as long as he has. But guess what? Wonder Boy's 37 years old at this point. What do you think of this fight? I like this matchmaking because it's veteran versus prospect.
Yeah, I like Neal. I think I'll take Neal on this fight too. I know Neal, man. I know Neal from Dallas. He's out there in Dallas.
Did you ever go to Moxie's in Dallas? Because he used to be a server, or he used to be a waiter there.
Yeah. That's how I know him. I know him from Moxie's, actually, so I know him from Moxie's, and we talk fighting, and I've been a Fortis too, so I've met him. I know him. I'm hoping that he pulls this off, because he battled COVID a few months back. It was a real tough one for him, and to see him bounce back and be able to make this card and be able to fight a guy like Stevens, I think that he should be able to pull it off skill wise. But as far as Stevens go, he's in a real weird position because he's getting older, and he's kind of in the middle of the pack. He's almost going to be a gatekeeper at this point, Yeah. So if he pulls this one off, then it just depends on how he pulls it off. If he looks spectacular doing it, then okay, Stevens, Wonder Boy's right back in the mix of things. But if he kind of just scrapes by, then he'll stay where he's at. Neal, however, it looks good. Neal propels himself because remember, every day this UFC is looking for stars. They're looking for somebody they could push, and they don't have those guys. You have the same 8-9 guys you got to push, and one of those guys lose, then you got to figure out who else is coming along. So hopefully Neal can push it, can push through and do something with this fight and make a name for himself and make some money for him and his family.
And you brought up a great point in that, if you're the UFC, you want Neal to win this. He's a younger guy. He's 30 years old. Wonder Boy's 37. I mean, Neal's right in the prime of his career on a really big winning streak. Actually, his last loss was against Kevin Holland at middleweight, who we just saw win again last weekend. So, good resume heading into this one. And it's a good test for him because if he beats Wonder Boy, then clearly he's at that level. But if Wonder Boy wins, it's going to really screw things up because even if he wins, he's not getting a title shot. He's not even close to a title at this point because there's just so much going on. You've got Burns and Usman. You've got Chimaev and Edwards, which I think is going to get rebooked. That was the original main event of this card. I think that has more prominence at this point than what happens with Wonder Boy. Although if Leon Edwards wins, maybe that switches things up. But and then you still got Masvidal and Colby, which I'm hearing that's still in the works right now. I actually talked to Colby last week, and it was like, hey, you want to do an interview or something? Talk about this rumor. He's like, trust me, we're working on things. We'll get in touch when things are official. But it sounds like that's going to happen with Masvidal and Colby, as it should, because that's a huge fight. That's one of the biggest fights you can make in that division. So.
Yeah, I think they should move this Chieffa fight to January on that card, whatever that card is.
Conor card?
Yeah, I think that didn't make sense.
Headline. That's my understanding is that I think the date they were targeting was January 30th. I think they want Chimaev and Edwards to headline that because they're trust me, Kev, they're a firm. They think this guy's the next Khabib.
Was it a pay-per-view? Was it a pay? Well, there was supposed to headline a pay-per-view.
No, they're supposed to fight this weekend, which is not a pay-per-view, but it's the last fight of the year. So I think that
I think it's fine. You let him headline a fight night, Yeah, that's no problem. You let him headline one of those fight nights and see where it goes from there. I think that the UFC is fully on board with this guy. This reminds me of when Darren Till came around and they just said, "Here's the keys, buddy." This is exactly what this feels like. It was really fast. It was really quick. It wasn't like no real test. And it was just like, this is the guy. And you're trying to push him towards the title. And that's fine. I get what you guys are doing. But, I think that even after Leon, let's just say he does get past Leon. Mm-hmm. Leon hasn't fought in a year and a half. So you're telling me that you're going to propel this guy faster than you're going to, past these other 3-4 guys that's ahead of him. There's literally 3-4 guys that's ahead of him. If we're going to be honest,
there's even more than that. He doesn't have a win over a ranked opponent. But this is what I think. It's not even about Leon, Kev. I think it's the ranking. He's number 3, so they will use that and say, he be the number 3 guy. Of course, he gets the title shot. They're going to do that because trust me, they're about the entertainment. They're not playing by the rankings. They're not playing by the rules. How does a guy? I've never heard of a guy who's had 3 UFC fights and is fighting the number 3 guy. That would be like if Khabib, when he started his career, he gets to fight, Benson Henderson, like 3rd fight in, right? That's just not happening.
Yeah, they move the goalpost according to who they're pushing and what they're trying to do. And also these rankings, man, oh my God, these rankings are so bad. First of all, you're gonna rank the fighters according to what you say it is. You're gonna say who's number 1 contender according to what you say it is. It's like that's not how this thing works. I think somebody else should be in charge of ranking the fighters.
Yeah.
I don't think that the same person who's putting the card together should be in charge of ranking the fighters. I think the ranking should be completely done by somebody else, another body, another governing body, so that at least it makes things a little fair and even. Because isn't Conor ranked #1 pound for pound? Didn't I see that?
Now, I heard that might have been a glitch. I'm going to go check right now. I hope
blew
that's
my mind. I said, no, there's no way. There's no way they could do.
What did you say off the top of this thing? What did we talk about? What did you say about MMA fans? What are the average MMA fans? They're gullible.
They're novice. They're so gullible. It's so easy to.
McGregor beat Eddie Alvarez in 20. You know what I mean? Like, they'll bring that up. I'm just looking at it here now. Let me see pound for pound. Is he really on there? No, they moved it back. Khabib's now #1. Where is Conor? Is Conor even on this list? He's not. They took Conor. Oh no, Conor's #12. Conor's ahead of Robert Whittaker. What? Crazy.
It is what it is, but and even in the lightweight ranking or the welterweight ranking, these things, what did Leon do to get knocked down from where he was at to #3 or 4, wherever he's at? What did this guy do to move up? What did that guy do to move down? Inactivity is one thing. If a guy gets injured or whatever case, okay, cool. But you're not going to move guys up and down just because you're trying to fix things to make it what you want it to be so that you can move forward with it. That's just my opinion.
Well, no, so how the rankings work is they have a bunch of journalists who do it. But here's the problem, and I know this because I obviously work in media. It doesn't take much to be a journalist. I was asked to do it. I said, no, I don't want, because I think it's biased. I don't think you should be influencing a fighter's, and plus it's just a lot of work and you'll get paid for it. It's why would I even bother? I got too much going on. I don't want to be part of this. But in general, you could be covering this sport in some random site and they'll give you the opportunity to be a part of the rankings. I don't like that. And you think in baseball, they're going to let some guy who does a blog be part of the Hall of Fame voting? Of course not. There needs to be a better vetting process in terms of who does the rankings. Our producer Taylor saying here, independent rankings. I agree, but it's a tricky situation. But it doesn't even matter because they don't follow the rankings, right? How does a Chimaev who's not even ranked fight the #3 guy? Doesn't make any sense. So there you go. We can do a whole show on that.
We could do a whole show just on ranking, man. Ranking and the scoring system. We could talk about that all night if we.
Why are they using a boxing model? Exactly. There you go. Okay. Yeah. One other thing I wanted to mention on this card. Again, it is a pretty good card for an end of the year, free card, so to speak. Nothing's free, but you know what I'm saying. Jose Aldo's on this card. He's actually going to be fighting Chito Vera. Now, Chito Vera, if people are watching, if they remember, got that win over Sean O'Malley in his last fight. He was a big underdog. He ended up coming through a little bit of a weird circumstance with O'Malley hurting himself in the fight and Vera capitalizing, getting the TKO finish. But this is a big fight for Aldo because if he loses this fight, I don't know where he goes from here because he just fought for the title. He lost. He got a 5th round stoppage loss to Piotr Jan. Piotr Jan's super talented. I think this is a big jump up for Chito, but at the same time, if Chito wins this, where the heck does Aldo go from here? He's 34. He's already not going to get a featherweight shot anymore because he's lost a couple times to Max Holloway. He already just lost to the bantamweight champ. If you lose here again, it's going to be a very long road back to that title shot with how deep bantamweight is. What do you think of the stakes for Jose Aldo this Saturday?
What's the young man that beat Sean O'Malley? What's his name again?
Chito Vera.
Chito Vera. I like him. I like him.
Oh, yeah.
I like him. He's really skilled. I was watching him train. I watched him train, and I watched that fight too. And he has a chip on his shoulder. I like how much of a chip on his shoulder he has.
Does not give a fuck. I hate to swear it here, but it's true. That's how he is. He's just I'll fight anyone, anytime, any weight, and I don't give a crap. And I love, and you know what was great? Because O'Malley's kind of he's a good salesperson, good sort of, guy, promoter, and Chito Vera wasn't having any of that. You can't put that past Chito. This guy's from Ecuador. He doesn't give a shit how you dress or what you're doing. He's going in there to take your head off, and he did that in that fight. So it's going to be interesting.
He's seen some hard times, that guy. You could tell, and I think he deserves a big shot like this, a big fight like this with a credible name, a former world champion in 2 different fighting organizations, and he's a top. Would you put Aldo in the top 5 lightweights of all time? I think I would. What is he? 145?
145. Yeah, featherweights. I think he's still one of the best ever. It's kind of a tough argument because Max Holloway beat him twice, but Max Holloway doesn't have a ton of title defenses. It's tough to sort of say who. A lot of people say Holloway's the best featherweight of all time. Which yeah, you could say that. I don't have an issue, but
BJ, you would say BJ, him. Where's BJ's prime?
BJ's 155.
155. There you go. So 145. Yeah, I think Aldo's up there somewhere, but in the top 5. But again, like you said, if he loses this, it's a tough road back. And You know, if he loses it, I mean, he's had what, over four title shots, and you know he's lost all of them. You know, so
Well, recently, yeah, 45. So 35 has only had one title shot, and that was the last fight against Jan. But the problem is bantamweight's so deep, and we're not even talking about some of the other names that are in there. Frankie Edgar dropped, and he got a win in his last fight over Pedro Munoz, so he's up there. You've got Dominic Cruz in the mix, who I know lost his last fight, but he's still a former champion. He's got some clout in that division. You got TJ Dillashaw, who's had the steroid suspension, who technically never lost his belt at 135.
Is he back? Is he coming back?
He's coming back in January, yeah.
Oh, I'm excited about that. I like TJ.
I'm trying to get an interview with him forever. His manager takes a little bit to get back, but I'm trying to get something with him here. He's managed by he's managed by Tiki.
Sometimes we got to do that to you guys, man, because you guys call all day.
I'll do one, and then I'll do a follow up, and then I get the message loud and clear. But
you guys want to do an interview even in dead times. It's like, yo, wait, I got some news for you guys soon. Just wait, you know.
Yeah. No, I hear you.
I understand, because I got to wear both hats now, you know. So I get it. Like, I would want to do that too. So. Yeah.
But the point I was getting at is that, like, it couldn't be worse timing for Aldo to have this fight because of just what's going on right now. Like I said, Dillashaw, the Jan and Sterling fight hasn't even been rebooked yet, so we don't even know what's happening there. But I personally think that if Aldo loses this, I think he's done as a contender. I think I might even say that I'll even go as far to say they might cut him, because you look at how much they're like Yoel Romero, they got rid of him. Rumble Johnson, they were like, you know, whatever, you go to Bellator if you want. Like, they're cutting costs right now. And for a guy like Aldo, who still doesn't speak any English, who's not very, like, he says he's a big name, but not exactly super marketable, I think they could say, hey, you want to go elsewhere? Go for it.
I was thinking that when you asked me that question, I think Aldo needs a fresh start.
Yeah.
And again, he's not old. He's 34, but he's been around forever. So it feels like he's been around forever, but he's only 34 years old. I mean, he's still there when it comes to, you know, being a guy that, you know, could be towards the end of his prime, but he's still right there. He could still fight for another 3-4 years if he wanted to. It just depends on, you know, who's put in front of him, and you know, he's still fighting at a very high level, as you've seen these last 3-4 fights. He's just losing to the better opposition, younger opposition, a little bit more fresher opposition. And then they have all of this tape on him. You understand, like, when you've been around, I got all types of tape on you. I could watch I've watched your best fight, your worst fight, your draws. I could watch everything on you, and I could study the hell out of you. And these young guys have all studied him. And remember, Aldo used to be a guy that was doing things a little bit more different, and he was a little bit more ahead of his time. You know, with the leg kicks and just the way he used to fight was a little bit more advanced than old fighters did. You know, he's stuck in between two generations, and he's able to kind of move forward with this new generation. And I just think that, you know, the guys have caught up to him, and that's just what it is.
I still think he wins on Saturday. I picked him on my preview show. He's a slight betting favorite right now, but -145 on some of the lines right there. Chito Vera +125. It's not that I don't think Chito's not good. I think he's great. I just think it's a big step up from, you know, some of the guys that Chito's fought. So we'll see what happens. But like I said, the pressure is definitely on Aldo in this fight ahead of Saturday. By the way, there's 14 fights on this card. I think one of them, the Bilal Muhammad fight's off because of COVID, but they had to throw those like COVID fights that got canceled before onto this card. So if you're watching this one, if you're watching the entire thing, prepare to, you know, have an early start for this one, because it's going to be a long card. The other thing we got to talk about, Khabib Nurmagomedov back in the news. They're saying he's going to be meeting with Dana White next month. Dana very optimistic about bringing him back here. But I mean, am I missing something here, Kev? Let's get your thoughts on this. But I mean, to me, it's GSP or bust. I don't know who else he would come back and fight. What do you think?
Who is he going to fight?
Yeah, like, because I think if Khabib's going to come back, it's got to be a reason to come back. It's got to be like a money fight or something, and you know he won't fight Conor. So who's he going to fight? It's got to be GSP, and I don't think GSP wants to come back.
Well, he's going to fight. Well, GSP doesn't want to come back because he grew some hair, so he's trying to show us this hair that he grew out of nowhere. Right? So he got blonde tips in it or silver tip. I don't know what's going on. I didn't even recognize him. But he got some hair, so you know he's trying to show that hair out real soon. But yeah, I mean, earlier in the year, I would say about 5-6 months ago, 7 months ago, he looked like he was cutting down in weight already. George was. He looked like he was really, really focusing on cutting down on weight and seeing how he feels at a certain weight or whatnot. And, you know, and he seems to be close to the weight, and he seems to be staying in shape. So I know he's watching what's going on. However, I never thought that Khabib's retirement was real. I don't think that's real. I think a guy needs a break. I think he needs a mental break. I think he needs a physical break because his body, first of all, his weight cuts are hard. His weight cards are really hard, and he's gonna make weight. It's not a question if he's gonna make weight or not make weight because he's a pretty big guy. But the weight cuts are hard, and also his father passed away, so he needs a mental break. It just makes perfect sense for him. He's 31 years old. He hasn't had a break in I don't know how long. He's always injured, So a guy like that needs a break for his body and needs a break for his mind. I think that he will come back, and when he does come back, if George is not available, I think the fire will be in his, the fire will be there in the belly to try to reclaim what he lost. Now, I don't think he's coming back in the first quarter. I don't think he's coming back in the second quarter. I think you're not seeing him until the third or fourth quarter if he does come back. And it's important for the UFC to try to get him back. Look how they're chasing him to go get him back. They need stars. They got to sell pay-per-views, guys. And a guy just left that has 2.4 million pay-per-view buys or some crazy shit like that in the card before that. The guy sells pay-per-views. And the UFC only has 9 or 8 guys who could sell it. And that guy's number 1, number 2, number 3, somewhere there in pay-per-view buys. You gotta go. Whatever he needs, you gotta give it to him. And he's in his prime. It's not like he's old. So it's like, shit, what do we got to do to get you back? They'll do anything to get that guy back. He carries a whole country. So a whole country and a whole religion of people. Don't get that. Don't miss that. He has a whole country of Russia, and then he has every Muslim person you could think of. And Muslims are not just Middle Eastern Russian. They're also African and Black. There's a huge Muslim population in America. So they need him. Yeah, they need him.
They do. Now, my only thing is, and I'm going to kind of look at this at a different angle as well, is that I think because of that, because he's such a religious person, it's not about the money for him. I don't get the sense that he's coming back because he needs the money or wants to do it. I think he's a guy that would live a very simple life and not a very flashy life. So it's not about the payday. It's got to be about the challenge. And I just don't know what challenges lie for him. With GSP, obviously a legend, a guy that he respects, that everyone respects. It's George St. Pierre, for God's sakes. I mean, this is one of the best ambassadors ever in the sport. But I'm looking at the rankings here. He just beat Dustin Poirier last year, and Poirier's got to fight McGregor as well, and that's an interesting fight. If McGregor wins that, I think there's so much bad blood there with what McGregor said in the media and all that stuff, the comments about his wife and religion and all that stuff. I think just out of just pure sort of ethics, he wouldn't want to fight McGregor because he doesn't want to give him that platform. And then you add in his manager who also hates him as well. I think that's another reason that won't happen. Charles Oliveira winning last weekend was good. I think that could be an interesting challenge. I would love to see him fight Charles Oliveira because guess what? Oliveira has got a pretty damn good ground game. We saw that he nearly snapped Tony Ferguson's arm off last weekend. So that's someone that's kind of intriguing. But outside of that, Ferguson's never happening. He just lost. Conor McGregor, I already scratched him off. I just mentioned Poirier he beat last year. Dan Hooker, Dos Anjos. You see what I mean? As we're going down this list at lightweight, are those fights that consider like Khabib a challenge? Is there anyone in there that's like an up-and-comer that really stands out? No. And then you go to welterweight. I mean, I don't even know if he'd even consider that, but who do you want to fight at welterweight? I don't know. So that's where I'm kind of I don't know if he comes back.
He will never fight. He will never fight Usman at welterweight, right? Because they're friends, and they're just that's never going to happen. Yeah. So I think I don't even think that it's going to be a person that gets him out of retirement, other than George St. Pierre. Obviously, that's the one that will get him out of already. All right, let's go. But I think it's going to be the desire to compete. After you understand, bro, there's a lot of mental stress that he's under right now. You lose your father, who is the backbone to his whole thing. He does this whole thing because of his father. So I think that in due time, as that slowly that heavy weight starts to wear off, and that pain starts to wear off, and that pain turns into desire, I think that he'll come back then. Now, they're trying to rush him back because they need the numbers and they need a star around like him. But I think he should do it on his own time, whether it's a year, whether it's 2 years from now. I think that eventually he will return. And if he doesn't, then he's found peace doing whatever he is that he's. And he has, bro, the guy has so much money. The guy's made so much money. And you know how much money they give him in those Arab countries for him to show up? Oh, you won't even believe it. Some of this stuff that he does for the money that he does it for, it's so good. And the guy, he's well off right now. So he doesn't need to fight. But I think as time progresses, the body fully heals, and you get that itch to continue to fight and to go out there. It doesn't matter who's holding the belt at that point. At that point, you just want to compete. And I think that's when he comes back.
We'll see. I'm curious to see what happens next year.
I'll
If he does
see.
come back, I better, yeah, I definitely want to hear. Yeah, we'll have to see if that does end up happening here. Okay, just a couple more things here I wanted to get to. Obviously, Habib sort of is the carrot that is sort of dangling here, because if he doesn't come back, then what happens with the lightweight title? And I said this right when this fight got booked. I think they're going to make Conor and Dustin a title fight, an interim fight or vacant title, whatever. I don't know what they're going to do there. Obviously, they'll like to get Habib back, but is that the sense you get as well? Because I just think they want Conor back as champion ASAP.
Yeah, again, it comes back to the stars, right? You need the stars. He's a star, and you have a belt around his waist. It's even bigger for the company, right? So they would love for that to happen. They would love for that to happen. But and I thought that this fight would be an interim fight. So far, they've not said it yet that it's an interim fight. But stranger things have known to happen, and really, they're gonna have that meeting with Khabib now to see if Khabib is going to agree to come back later the year or whenever he's going to decide to come back. And if they can't agree to it, get ready for an interim sticker to be stuck on that poster here in the next few weeks.
Yeah, no, we'll be keeping tabs on that. That's coming up here pretty soon here. That's January 23rd, I think, is that Conor fight. We'll have to keep tabs on that.
Who's oh, by the way, before we jump into the next one,
sure.
Who's next? It's Conor versus Dustin, but who else is sitting around at that weight class?
So there's this. So Michael Chandler came over from Bellator, and they're sort of thinking of him as being one of the contenders, because if you remember, he was supposed to be the backup, or he was the backup for Khabib and Gaethje if there was an injury or something in there. I think that had more to do with the fact that Chandler hadn't fought either of them. Like, you couldn't have Poirier be the backup because Poirier had already, he just fought Khabib. They don't want to see that rematch, right? So I think that's why Chandler was sort of put there. But I'm hearing all types of rumblings. I'm hearing Chandler and Dan Hooker. I'm hearing Chandler and Gaethje as potential opponents. We know Chandler has a fight. We know he's in camp right now. We just don't know the opponent. Could the UFC have dropped the ball any worse on this Chandler thing? Like, what's the deal? Why can't they just announce the fight? I don't get that.
I think it really comes down to the opponent and also how things play out. Certain things just didn't play out how they expected it to play out, or everything kind of fall in place how it needed to fall in place. So I feel like Chandler will get his chance. I think that Chandler will he's going to kind of sit back and watch what's going on with this fight. I think that he beats one guy, then he fights for the title. I don't think he goes straight to the title. They don't want to let guys go straight to the title anymore, because of how it shakes things up. So I think you win one, then you go for a title. So I think he will eventually be fighting for that title next year, excuse me. If he gets past Hooker, and I think he could get past Hooker, honestly.
Well, I don't think he gets. I think if he fights Gaethje, I don't know if he gets past him. I think the Hooker fight makes more sense.
The Hooker fights make sense. Yeah. I don't think he gets past Gaethje either. I don't know. It's a tough one. Ooh, that's a tough one. But I have Gaethje winning that fight because a little more dog, a little bit more stand up, a little bit more violence, to where Chandler is an outstanding wrestler, great on the ground. He gotten better at striking as time progressed, but I think that Gaethje just got a little bit more dog in him.
I agree. And then, sort of you brought up about Chandler. Yeah, I think they're gonna ease him into it because, you remember Eddie Alvarez when he came over, he had to fight Donald Cerrone in his debut, and he actually ended up losing that fight. So that's sort of what we've seen in the past in terms of other fighters coming over from different promotions. That's happening next year. 2021, as we're wrapping things up quickly. What are some fights to be made? We talked about Joshua and Fury in boxing. I know in MMA, John Jones at heavyweight, that's still something that's out there, right? Like, you talked about the UFC needing names. They got to figure out what the heck is happening with John Jones. Because what's interesting, Kev? They have not signed that Ngannou and Stipe fight yet. I don't know what's going on with that. I don't know who's holding it up. I don't know if it's Stipe saying I want more money or what the deal is. But, John Jones at heavyweight against anyone is going to be a mega fight. But what are some fights in boxing, do you think? Or MMA as well?
For who? For John?
Well, for anyone. Like, what are some big fights you think are on tap for next year?
Oh, there's a couple. Yeah, John at heavyweight. Izzy, if he decides to move to 205 or he stays at 185.
Blachowicz, yeah. They haven't announced it, but I think that's all the stars are aligning towards that.
That's what he should be lining himself up to do, is to go over there and that can entice John to come back down and get him. Again, it's chess, not checkers. You know what I'm saying? So the credibility of being a 2-division world champion really means something, especially in UFC, because in boxing, you can become a 2, 3, 4, 5 division weight champion, 3 division, 4 division weight champion, because the weights are not too far apart. 147 and 154, 140 and 147, 130, 135. I mean, these weights are not far apart, and there's 4 belts, so you can definitely get a title. As far as the big fights go, yeah, Izzy can get one. I think that I like Clarissa. I want to see what's going to happen with Clarissa.
We didn't even mention that. I forgot about her.
Oh my God! First of all, she should be ranked. She should be ranked in the pound for pound top 5. She should be in the ranking. The reason why is because she's a 3-division world champion, 4-division world champion, and she's a 2-time gold medalist. Bro, come on. Just because she's a girl, they're not gonna. But nah, bro. I think she beats up a lot of guys. Honestly, I think she beats up a lot of guys. I'm being honest. Like, I've seen this girl. She's a problem. Like, she's a problem. So it's very interesting to see how her fight's gonna play out in mixed martial arts, because she's in camp over there in New Mexico with Wink. Yeah, with Holly Holm and John Wink and John Jones and those guys over there. So I think, now granted, you're not going to learn everything overnight, but if you give her enough time, I think if she gets at least 6, 7, 8 months of training, and really, it's really the ground I'm worried about, the ground and the leg strikes. Because one thing that I know about fighting, being around all these fighters and training with all of these guys, when I go to a training camp for boxing, when I go to a training camp for mixed martial arts, the difference in the training is, what I've noticed right away is, when you're standing up with another guy and you're in mixed martial arts, you're mentally prepared for everything that he could throw, whether it's a punch, it's a kick, or he's lunging in for a takedown. But in boxing, a guy is not even worried about that. He's just standing right here, and that's it. We're gonna figure this thing out up here. When you're in mixed martial arts and they're training, that's what you're focused on. So her mind has to be less worried about standing up and worried about what's going to happen over there, and that requires your base to be a little bit more wider, so that you're not taken down, or you could check those kicks. You know what I mean? And she has to start preparing herself to get out of that boxing stance fully, and just lower, her base a little bit more, and be ready for a takedown. And if this goes to the ground, you're most likely going to be the one that's on your back, and then that's where it gets where most people panic, because they're not used to being on their back. So it's interesting to see how. So I hope that they're training her and teaching her how to get, because the first thing somebody's going to do when she gets in there is going to try to take her down, and she's going to be on her back. And
like James Toney and Randy Couture.
We've seen this happen. How many times have we seen this happen, bro? We've seen this happen. So and they get on their back, and they all start panicking. So we got, hopefully she learns things, how to fight off of her back, and not just how to fight being on top of somebody,
Yeah, actually, we have an interview on our channel. I just did it today with Misha Tate, talking about Clarissa Shields and her move. And Tate sort of, summarized it there, that you can't get any better training than going to Jackson Wink, because Holly Holm did this exact same thing, coming over from boxing, going to MMA, and she didn't go to, there was no PFL back then, but she did Legacy. She got to build up her name there, get a couple highlight reel finishes, and then jumped over. And what happened? She ended up going on to beat Ronda Rousey. So there you go. I mean, we'll see what the potential is, but I think I'm excited. Like, I love, like, even before, she made this move, I mean, just the idea of her coming over was sort of teased, and I was like, this is cool. So I think the more the merrier, and good to see she gets
brave, bro. She is not scared.
She's young. She's not like she's in her, like, I wouldn't even say she's in her prime. I'd say she's even before it. Like, she's what, 25, 26, I think.
Yeah, she's tough, bro. She's brave. She's smart, and she's just a dog, bro. Like, oh my God. If she was a dude, I'll put it to you this way: if Clarissa was a guy, that's all we'd be talking about in fighting right now, in boxing at least, because and I hate that that's what it is, because it's like they should just be talking about her, because she's a bad motherfucker. Like, there's no other way of saying it. She is a bad motherfucker, bro. And I think about it like this: everybody goes from mixed martial arts to boxing. Nobody goes from boxing to mixed martial arts. That lets you know everything you need to know about her.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Nobody does that. So for her to do that in her prime as a world champion right now, because most guys are over the hill when they decide to jump to MMA. But her, she ain't scared. She's not scared. So good luck to her in this transition. I'm looking forward to seeing it. And I'm excited to see her. But yeah, that's a big fight. Obviously Tyson Fury, big fight with Anthony Joshua, Errol Spence, Manny Pacquiao, we talked about. Then you got the guys at 135 and the guys at 130. Ryan Garcia, Gervonta Davis, Devin Haney, mean, you got the list goes on for those guys. So it could go so many different ways. There's so many fights to make happen. Who's the kid that unified? Who took all of Lomachenko's belts? Teofimo Lopez.
Yeah.
You know, so. Dude, there's so many fights to make, yeah, there's so many, and then you got to keep a close eye on 140 because there's a unification bout that's going to take place. An undisputed champion there'll be one champion at 140 in the next 4 months, next 4 to 5 months. There'll be a one champion guy who will have all 4 belts, and that's going to be between Ramirez and who's Ramirez fighting out of Europe, out of London. Who's that? Josh Taylor. Yeah. That's right. There you go. See, our Taylor from Fanatic Views is on point, man. He just all the facts just come spitting on the right side. So in case I lose track, but yeah. So there'll be a unification bout. There'll be an undisputed champion 140, which is very close to 135, which is the next jump. So logically, the next thing, the champion, whoever remains at 135 with belts, should move up to 140 and go try to steal all those belts. So it's an exciting time in fighting. Oh, did we talk about the young guy that's knocking everybody out in boxing from New York, Berlanga.
Yeah, Berlanga.
There's a young guy named Berlanga, 16-0, 16 knockouts, all knockouts in the first round. Edgar Berlanga.
Yeah, that was the guy who showed up late to the weigh-ins, right?
I believe so. I'm not.
The announcer kind of gave him shit for it. I remember seeing that on my timeline. I was kind of checking that out. Like, yeah, he's a good fighter, but I think he's kind of getting this reputation of being kind of unprofessional. That's what I was hearing.
Well, no, he's real good. He has that New York arrogance in him, that Brooklyn, that I'm from New York thing. But interesting thing. I watched a sparring because I have questions just like everybody has questions, and I'm like, nah, like. This guy's running through everybody, and they're saying, he's fighting tomato cans and all of this and all of that. The last guy he fought was not a tomato can. Let's just be clear about that. That guy that he last fought is a guy that's been around for a while, and he's not old. He's a seasoned vet. He's 32, 33 years old. He's right there, and he's trained and sparred all of these guys, all top guys, and he's held his own against Andre Ward. And even though he took a beating a couple of times in that sparring session, but generally, he's a guy that can be around, which is cool. But I saw a video of Eric Lubin versus Edgar Berlanga in sparring. And Lubin is not just he's a prime. He's 24, 25-year-old in his prime. The Hammer, they call him the Hammer. And he's fighting at 154. And he's a former world champion. He lost his belt, but he only has one loss on his record. And I saw a sparring video of those two guys, and it went nothing like any of these fights that I've seen him in, where he's knocking guys out in the first round. Let's just say he was getting as much as he was given and probably taking more than he's ever taken that we've seen him take on live television. So it's very interesting. It's very interesting, brother, to see what could happen with a guy like that when you put some, competition around him. We'll see how that plays out. But yeah, I'm excited about his career too.
Yeah, there's a lot to look forward to next year. And this was another awesome episode, man. We killed it as usual. Make sure if you're watching this to hit that like button, hit the subscribe button. You're going to find this podcast. You're going to find all my MMA interviews. We've been killing it. We did Demetrius Johnson last week. We got Misha Tate this week. We got another big guest tomorrow. Don't want to say it, Taylor. I know you're watching. We've already booked the interview, but in case it doesn't pan out, don't look like a dummy here, but it's a big name, former UFC champion. We'll just leave it at that. But Kev, anything you want to plug here before we get out of here? Any social media, anything you got coming up with your fighters? The floor is yours, sir.
Man, first of all, I'm totally jealous that you got Mighty Mouse on there. I love Mighty Mouse. I think he's an exceptional athlete, exceptional fighter. I think if he was bigger, he would have been able to stick around a little longer. It's just a shame and a travesty that a guy that good is not recognized for being as good as he is. So, hats off to you to be able to get him on there. And yeah, man, we'll see. We've got a close eye on this Ryan Garcia card. Right now with my young fighter Tristan. Tristan is a exceptional young man, and he's fighting a cruiserweight. So hopefully we'll get him on that card very soon here in the next week or so. We'll know that Ryan Garcia card, which will take place in Dallas, Texas. Other than that, January 2nd is when that fight takes place. So hopefully we'll get it done. American Airlines Arena in Dallas, Texas. So we're close to closing out on that. We don't know the opponent yet, but we shall see here in the next week or so. Maybe the next podcast I'll be able to talk to you about that.
There you go. Love it. Follow me on Twitter, like it says on the screen, at Lynch on Sports. I've been just doing a ton of interviews lately. Like I said, the Misha Tate interview, got to peep that one. A lot of good stuff with Misha. Moving back to the States. Yeah, you can watch it right now, like Kev is right now. You can enjoy it. It was a good interview. So she's a fellow Pacific Northwester, like me as well. And yeah, so just tune in. Like I said, subscribe, hit the like button. We'll be back here talking more boxing, MMA. You're not going to find any talk like this anywhere else. So you guys got to tune in. I'm James Lynch. He is Kevin Mubenga. Thanks so much for watching, everyone. And producer Taylor.
It's always a pleasure to be with you, my man.
Appreciate it, guys. Have a good one. We'll see you next time.